In an era where constant sharing has become the norm, where people broadcast every moment of their existence in high definition, there is something striking about those who remain truly centered. The most compelling individuals among us speak less. They guard certain truths like precious treasures. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who explored the depths of human consciousness, didn't merely analyze the mind. He charted the hidden landscape of our inner world. Among his most profound observations is this: when the unconscious remains unexamined, it controls your existence, and you'll mistake this control for destiny. Certain revelations, when expressed prematurely or indiscriminately, become corrupted, misinterpreted, turned against you, or simply misunderstood. Most tragically, they lose their potency. This discussion isn't about strategic silence in social situations. We're exploring silence as protection, as energetic maintenance, as deliberate choice in our overstimulated reality. By the end, you'll understand why keeping certain truths private isn't deception. It is actually elevated wisdom. We'll explore 6 hidden principles that, when revealed at inappropriate moments or to unsuitable people, can shatter your mental equilibrium, scatter your spiritual focus, and paradoxically invite the very turmoil you're attempting to prevent. Let's dive in. First, never reveal what you perceive in another person's darkness. You've experienced this. You recognize someone's destructive patterns, their repetitive cycles, their unconscious behaviors, the impulse to help arises. You believe showing them this reflection with compassion will create awareness. However, Jung would warn against this. People cannot acknowledge their darkness until they're prepared, and imposing that reflection prematurely only generates shame, resistance, or separation. The shadow, those unconscious, disowned aspects of ourselves, isn't something people simply recognize when you indicate it. It is something they must discover when their consciousness is ready to expand. When you expose someone's shadow before they possess the psychological strength to integrate it, healing doesn't occur. Damage does. This explains why your most sincere observations sometimes land poorly or trigger defensiveness. Jung's research demonstrates that genuine transformation occurs when understanding meets preparedness, not before, and certainly not according to your schedule. If you possess this perceptive ability, protect your vision. Simply because you can perceive what is concealed in others doesn't make revelation your responsibility. True wisdom means recognizing when silence serves better than speech, when to allow people to navigate their own journey. Second, the authentic reason behind cutting someone off. We often feel compelled to justify ourselves when distancing from a connection. Here is reality. Some departures aren't rooted in conflict or drama. They're about frequency, incompatibility, and an evolution in your energy that requires no justification. When you've transcended a relationship, Jung would say you've assimilated a new dimension of your psyche. You've evolved. Sometimes remaining would mean abandoning your authentic path, explaining your departure to someone, particularly when they lack the capacity to comprehend. Often sacrifices your inner tranquility. It opens doors to argument, manipulation, emotional coercion. You owe your growth to no one's endorsement. This isn't abandonment. It is energetic completion. Attempting to rationalize a soul-level decision to someone operating from ego will only draw you back into their chaos. Your peace isn't a debate. Allow the silence to communicate and let the boundary exist. Third, the generosity you extended that remained unseen. In a culture where everyone performs virtue for validation, doing good without announcement feels revolutionary. That is precisely the significance. Carl Jung understood that authentic individuation, the path toward your highest self, demands internal congruence over external recognition. When you act kindly and nobody witnesses it, that is sacred. That is genuine work. The instant you publicize your good action, it transforms into social currency. It ceases being pure kindness. It becomes theater. The spiritual essence evaporates. Worse, it nourishes exactly what Jung cautioned against: your persona, the facade you construct to earn affection rather than embody truth. Your soul requires no audience. It requires authenticity. That instance when you assisted someone without documenting it, without anticipating gratitude, without posting for approval, that was transcendent. That was the universe expressing itself through you. When you act magnanimously, whether energetically or materially, it resonates more profoundly than any announcement could. Let your higher consciousness be the observer. Let your karma register your contributions, not social media. Fourth, don't discuss your intentions before they're established. There is wisdom in why seeds germinate in darkness. Silence safeguards possibility. Before aspirations materialize, they exist in a delicate, sacred state. Speak prematurely, and you invite skepticism, distortion, or envy into the space. Carl Jung examined the concept of psychic energy, what he termed libido, not merely as sexual drive, but as vital force. Every vision, every ambition carries psychic energy. When you had plans to you drain that energy, you dilute it, you expose it to vulnerability through opinions, criticism, or disbelief. Recall times when you shared your vision with someone and they responded with skepticism, or worse, polite disinterest. In that moment, something deflated within you, not because your vision lacked merit, but because it wasn't ready to withstand scrutiny yet. You were still cultivating it. You needed protection, not exposure. The psyche is fertile ground, and like life forming in the womb, your visions need time to develop. Speaking too soon is like interrupting the baking process. All the heat escapes, nothing rises properly. This isn't about hiding, it is about ownership. Your aspirations deserve the foundation of your conviction before facing the winds of others' doubt. Continue nurturing, continue constructing, and when the manifestation becomes undeniable, explanation becomes unnecessary. You simply embody it. Fifth, your opinions about other people. You might consider sharing your perspective, especially regarding people in your sphere, as innocuous. But here is the overlooked truth. When you speak about others, you're simultaneously revealing yourself. Carl Jung famously observed that everything irritating us about others can illuminate our own nature. This means your commentary about others often reflects your internal landscape more than theirs. Criticizing someone, especially casually or within shared circles, often expresses your shadow speaking. That disowned aspect, the jealousy, the uncertainty, the anxiety, projected outward. When we speak from that place, it is not insight. It is projection, and people detect it. Additionally, if your listener lacks grounding, that information becomes gossip, fuel, and weaponry potentially used against you regardless of your intention. Conscious individuals might recognize your projection. They won't confront you directly, but they'll remember. They'll observe patterns. They'll understand your commentary reveals more about you than about your subject. Those lacking self-awareness will repeat your words, perhaps distort them, perhaps quote you differently. Suddenly, you're entangled in a narrative you never intended to join. Safeguard your energy and your discernment. When tempted to speak about someone, pause and question, is this about them or am I exposing something about myself? Remember, clarity doesn't always require voice. Some truths serve best when held in stillness. Sixth, the private dimensions of your romantic relationship. We all need outlets occasionally, but there is a crucial distinction between seeking support and exposing sacred details. Each time you share intimate truths about your relationship, especially during conflict, you're introducing external energy into a space meant for protection. Carl Jung would describe this as the sacred union of opposites, anima and animus, feminine and masculine, the internal partnership. When you disrupt that dynamic with gossip, complaints, or overexposure, you create fractures in the psychic connection. Support is acceptable, but oversharing every disagreement, every insecurity, every irritation, that is not healing, that is hemorrhaging. Each leak invites interference, envy, comparison, opinions lacking your complete context. Even supportive friends can contaminate the waters. Suddenly, someone without full understanding of your connection offers guidance based on fragments, and those fragments warp your perception. Energetically, your relationship is a frequency. Speaking about it, particularly in anger, disrupts the field. You begin emphasizing flaws over development, problems over progress. Jung would remind us that relationships are alchemical containers. They transform us, but only when we protect their sacred space. When the internal dynamic faces constant external judgment, it loses transformative power. Speak to a therapist, journal, meditate, but allow your relationship to exist in sacred privacy. What is sacred flourishes. What is overexposed diminishes. Now that you've absorbed all six, pause for reflection. This isn't merely a catalogue of things to withhold. It is a framework for maintaining your inner equilibrium, spiritual progress, and energetic integrity in a world constantly demanding transparency. Carl Jung's psychology wasn't about pretense or performance. It was about integration, becoming complete, and part of that completeness is understanding what not to express. Because silence isn't void, it is wisdom. When you don't expose what you perceive in another's shadow, you honor their journey. When you don't justify your departures, you preserve your frequency. When you don't broadcast your kindness, you allow the universe to witness it. When you don't announce your plans, you give them space to strengthen and emerge. When you don't judge others, you liberate yourself from your own projections. When you keep your romantic intimacy protected, you maintain the connection's strength. These aren't commandments, they're practices, disciplines of an awakened mind, an evolving soul, a life unfolding in alignment with something deeper than validation. You needn't vocalize everything you experience. You needn't justify everything you do, actually. The more aligned you become, the less explanation you'll require. Next time you feel compelled to share one of these six things, pause and ask yourself, does this serve my highest self or satisfy my lower impulses? If this message resonated with you, share it with someone ready to reclaim their peace. Comment below, which principle impacted you most, or which have you violated before, and what did that teach you if you're pursuing self-awareness, energy work, and elevated consciousness. Subscribe to Fractal Wisdom for more content that speaks to your soul. Thank you for your presence. Now go protect your power.